Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari. Yashoda Nandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari. Yashoda Nandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Thank you. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parira Jakacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parira Jakacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gogor Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satyanandana Bhaktivinoda Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanata Pata Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopikopana Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gunath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ishkan Bharma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Govinda. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Oh Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naram namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tito Jayam Hridayat Nasta Preshu Avatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer the respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Nara Narayan, Rishi, the supremmost human being, and unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Hare Krishna. So today is January 5th, 2025, and we're reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 25, Description of the Characteristics of King Puranjana, and we'll be doing verse 41. Let's see. Anamavira Vikyatam Varanyam Priya Darshanam Navrinita Priyam Praptam Madrishi Shampatim Kanamavira Vikyatam Varanyam Priya Darshanam Navrinita Priyam Praptam Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim Kanamavira Vikyatam Varanyam Priya Darshanam Navrinita Priyam Praptam Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim. Okay, please chant.
Anamavira Vikyatam
Anamavira Vikyatam
Varanyam Priya Darshanam
Varanyam Priya Darshanam
Navrinita Priyam Praptam
Navrinita Priyam Praptam
Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim
Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim Kanamavira Vikyatam Varanyam Priya Darshanam Navrinita Priyam Praptam Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim
Kanamavira Vikyatam
Kanamavira Vikyatam
Vadanyam Priya Darshanam
Vadanyam Priya Darshanam
Navrinita Priyam Praptam
Navrinita Priyam Praptam
Madrishi Tvadrisham
Tvadrisham Patim Kanamavira Vikyatam Varanyam Priya Darshanam Navrinita Priyam Praptam Madrishi Tvadrisham Patim. Okay, word for word. Ka, who, Nama, indeed, Vira, my dear hero, Vikyatam, Vadanyam, magnetic, Priya Darshanam, beautiful, Na, not. Pranita, would accept. Priyam, easily. Praptam, gotten. Madrashi, like me. Tvadrasham, like you. Patim, husband. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh, my dear hero, who in this world will not accept a husband like you? You are so famous, so magnanimous, so beautiful, and so easily gotten. Please repeat. Oh, my dear hero, who in this world will not accept a husband like you? You are so famous, so magnanimous, so beautiful, and so easily gotten. Purport. Every husband is certainly a great hero to his wife. In other words, if a woman loves a man, that man appears very beautiful and magnanimous. Unless one becomes beautiful in the eyes of another, one cannot dedicate his whole life to another. The husband is considered very magnanimous because he gives as many children to the wife as she likes. Every woman is fond of children. Therefore, any husband who can please his wife by sex and give her children is considered very magnanimous. Not only does the husband become magnanimous by begetting children, but by giving his wife ornaments, nice food, and dresses, he keeps her completely under submission. Such a satisfied wife will never give up the company of her husband. Manu Samhita recommends that to keep a wife satisfied, a husband should give her some ornaments, because women are generally fond of home, ornaments, dresses, children, etc. In this way, the woman is the center of all material enjoyment. In this regard, the word vikyatam is very significant. A man is famous for his aggression towards a beautiful woman, and such aggression is sometimes considered rape. Although rape is not legally allowed, it is a fact that a woman likes a man who is very expert at rape. Om Jnana Timirandasya Chanjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sagana Raghunathan Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamatamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Japta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrinda Vineshwari Rishubhano Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namaste Jivananda Jasena Charya Brahman Malabai Sniti Sivananda Yandra Basketi. Okay, so this purport is often the most controversial one in pretty much the entire Bhagavatam, and I drew the short straw, so I got the class. We are definitely going to address that last paragraph, but there's some preliminary stuff I want to talk about first. So I don't want you to think that I'm not addressing that last line there, because I will be, but there's some things I want to talk about first. And I see you giggling back there. Okay, all right. So first of all, in this verse, the woman that King Paranja is talking to, the woman who represents his material intelligence, she's telling the king how wonderful he would be as a husband. She finds him very attractive. And this attraction in the realm of marriage is very important. The attraction between men and women is so strong that it's the reason for most things in material life, right? We see men going to school to become doctors, lawyers, scientists, etc. And this is so they can get a good job and have good prospects for finding a mate. Or perhaps they're learning guitar so they can become a rock star and maximize their opportunity to find a mate, right? Find many mates. Or at the very least, they can impress a girl by, writing her a little song and singing it to her. Alternately, we see women dressing up nicely, wearing makeup, putting on lashes, fake fingernails, all sorts of things. And this is also to facilitate finding a mate, right? Women are often told, although not so much anymore, but it still happens, women are often told, oh, you better learn to cook, you better learn to clean, you better learn to sew, right? In order to find a nice husband. And women, this is natural, and it's hardwired into us, right? So Srila Prabhupada goes on to say that you can satisfy your wife by giving her children, home, ornaments, dresses, good food. And the modern women, I think, might want to argue this point a little bit. But if we look around at our society, we can see that there's many examples of this. Of course, there's exceptions. So if you look at relatively common practice of an older, wealthy man that has a relationship with a young, beautiful woman, there's some examples. One is there was a billionaire, J. Howard Marshall, who was 90 years old when he married Anna Nicole Smith. She was 26 years old, right? We have Leonardo DiCaprio, famous actor, right? He's 50 years old, and he is known for only dating girls under 25 years old. It's so much that it's become a joke, right? It's become a joke. Oh, no, girlfriend turned 25, time to get a new one, right? We have Anthony Kiedis. He's a rock star, lead singer of the band Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's 52 years old. His girlfriend is 19 years old, right? Now, these young women, do you think they're attracted to these older bodies? That they're just like, oh, yes, you know what? It's nothing more that I want than someone who's twice my age. I find that really attractive. No, that's not what they find attractive, right? They're attracted by the fact that they can have a nice home, good food, nice dresses, and perhaps have children that will be nicely supported, right? And these women will generally stay with these men to maintain that lifestyle, even though they're often not very happy. And we can see evidence of this in the fact that so many of them had turned to drugs or affairs in order to kind of distract themselves from the fact that they're not happy, even though they have all these material things. I think they're traded in for a younger model, right? So it's not a very good system. We also have women now who are, independent. They're very wealthy on their own, and they're able to do whatever they wish with their money. And many of them choose to have a nice home, beautiful dresses, good food, ornaments, nice children. If we look at the Kardashians, which I know the Kardashians are somewhat mocked sometimes, but really these women, they have fame, they have beauty, they have fortune, right? They have everything that most people desire, most common people desire. And they can do anything they want. But what they're choosing to do is have nice homes. They're choosing to have good food, dresses, ornaments, children, all these things. But still, these women are not happy. And we can see evidence of this by the constant changing of their romantic partners, right? By the constant changing of their physical appearance, by getting plastic surgery, things like that. And the reason for this is because they're only living to serve their senses. So let's talk about the proper way to do family life. So this would be in the Grihastha ashram. So this is different from the Grihimades. The Grihimades, these are the people that I just described. These are people that they're only concerned with satisfying their own senses. And the Grihasta is also in family life, also enjoying sense gratification, except for their life is God or Krishna centered, right? He's in the center there. And so a few verses ago in the purport, it said, a Grihasta enjoys sex life in this life as well as in the next, but a Grihimedi does not know what the next life is about because he simply is interested in sex in this life. On the whole, when one is too much inclined towards sex, he does not care for the transcendental spiritual life. All right, so sometimes people will criticize ISKCON and say, we're a little bit anti-family life. Sometimes we're pushing renunciation too much. I've heard that said. But we have to understand, everybody has different things that are favorable to their Krishna consciousness. For some people, it is favorable for them to enter family life. That helps facilitate their Krishna consciousness. And for others, it is unfavorable for them to enter family life because it hinders their Krishna conscious, their life in Krishna consciousness. So the Grihasta ashram is actually very important. One, because most people need to go through this part of their life, right? It's a need, bodily need, right? For most people. And it's important also because we need to have a population of people that are raised in Krishna consciousness, right? That's what this movement is trying to do, right? Is try to make as many people as possible Krishna conscious. And the Grihasta ashram can help facilitate that because we can raise children to be Krishna conscious. So the Grihasta ashram is also important because it gives proper shelter and protection to Vaishnavis, to women and children. And again, the modern women may take umbrage at the fact that, a woman needs to be protected. But let's face it, women are more vulnerable for a number of reasons. One, women are physically weaker on average. Women are often preyed upon by men, a lot more than men are preyed upon, right? Women in general economically make less money, right? They're just not as economically stable. And then they're often put at a huge disadvantage for years because they have to spend so much time and energy raising children. Also, women are very soft-hearted in general, right? And so all these things kind of contribute to the fact that women should be protected. And I've seen, and I'm sure we've all seen many examples in our culture, protected women have bad outcomes. Examples would be abusive and exploitative relationships, right? I see this all the time. Single motherhood, where women, a man has impregnated a woman and then for whatever reason has decided to not take care of his responsibilities. And so now that woman is left having to raise that child by herself and try to provide economic stability and also, educate that child in everything that the child needs to learn. And that's very difficult for one person to do. And also, we see, just women being harassed or taken advantage of by men. I remember many years ago, my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, she went to the grocery store with her two very young children, and she's just doing the grocery shopping. And when she was there, this man started just harassing her, just calling her names. He was trying to, pretending like he was going to run her and the children over with his car. This was in the parking lot as she was leaving. And he was following her in his car. And she managed to get her and the children in the car, and she drove home. And by the time she got home, she was hysterically crying. She was just so distraught. And And my brother and my father, were like, oh my goodness, what happened? And she told them what happened. And immediately they ran up to the grocery store to try to find this man and let him know, like, this is not okay behavior. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, they didn't find him, right? I mean, and so they were trying to protect her, although a little bit late. It was a little bit after the fact. And so these are the kinds of things that can happen. So there's another reason that the Grihastha ashram is important, and that is souls want to be born in this yuga, right? Why? Why is that? So it says in the 11th canto, my dear king, the inhabitants of Satya Yuga and other ages eagerly desire this age of Kali. And since in this age there will be many devotees of the Supreme Lord Narayan, these devotees will appear in various places, but will be especially numerous in South India. O Master of Men, in the age of Kali, those persons who drink the water of the holy rivers will almost all be pure-hearted devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva. And I'm going to read a partial purport. The inhabitants of Satya Yuga are certainly aware of the conditions in Kali Yuga. They know that in Kali Yuga, the difficult material situation forces the living entity to take complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the inhabitants of Kali Yuga therefore develop a high degree of love of Godhead. Therefore, although the inhabitants of Satya Yuga are far more sinless, truthful, and self-controlled than the people of other ages, they desire to take birth in Kali Yuga in order to taste pure love of Krishna. Without associating with devotees of the Lord, no one can become an advanced devotee of the Lord. Therefore, since in Kali Yuga, other Vedic processes collapse due to unfavorable condition, and since the only authorized Vedic process is the devotional chanting of the Lord's holy name, which is available to everyone, there will undoubtedly be innumerable Vaishnavas or devotees of the Lord in this age. Birth in this age is very favorable for one who is eager to associate with devotees. In fact, the Krishna consciousness movement is establishing unauthorized Vaishnava temples throughout the world so that in innumerable areas, one may avail himself of association with pure Vaishnavas. So association is, and household life is a great vehicle for association if it is done properly. What better association is there than being born in a Vaishnava family? We only have to look at our dear Jamuna, right, to see that. She's been raised with such wonderful association, and she's such an amazing devotee. So you raise your family as a devotional service to Krishna. You could be doing all kinds of pious activities, but if you don't have devotee association, it's easy to become sidetracked or unenthused. And I think some of us have seen this personally. So the purport continues. It says, association with devotees of the Lord is far more valuable than any amount of association with persons who are merely controlled, sinless, or expert in Vedic scholarship. Therefore, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Muktanam api siranam narayana paranaya surjalabha prashtanatma kotish bhakti mahamune. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. Similarly, stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Sastre Kai, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hai. The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. So just one moment's association. What to speak of in association, right? So one moment's association with a pure devotee is enough to attain all success. So later on in the fourth canto, not too far from where we are now, it says, even a moment's association with a pure devotee cannot be compared to being transferred to heavenly planets or even merging into the Brahman effulgence in complete liberation. For living entities who are destined to give up the body and die, association with pure devotees is the highest benediction. The purport says, a pure devotee considers a moment's association with another pure devotee to be far superior to residing in a heavenly planet or merging in the Brahman effulgence. The topmost benediction for those who are living in this material world and are subjected to the repetition of birth and death is association with pure devotees. One should search out such pure devotees and remain with them. That will make one completely happy, even though living within the material. This Krishna consciousness movement started for that purpose. The person who is overly affected materially may take advantage of this movement and become intimately associated with it. In this way, the confused and frustrated inhabitants of this material world may find the highest happiness in association with devotees. So in this way, living Grihastha life can be a great opportunity to serve Krishna by bringing up Krishna conscious children, and by allowing those souls from previous yugas to be born so they can get a taste of Krishna prema by associating with the devotees. Okay, so now with the association of all the devotees here, let's talk about this controversial, perhaps the most controversial statement in the entire Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, in this regard, the word Vikyatam is very significant. Man is always famous for his aggression toward a beautiful woman. And such aggression is sometimes considered rape. Although rape is not legally allowed, it is a fact that a woman likes a man who is very expert at rape. Okay, so first, when we're evaluating any text, it's important to take into consideration things that will help you have a further understanding of the text and reduce the possibility of misunderstanding. So there's a whole discipline devoted to this kind of analysis. It's called hermeneutics, right? I know you've talked about hermeneutics before. So hermeneutics is the study of interpretation or the theory and methodology of understanding and communicating meaning. It is the study of how to interpret something, including the art and techniques of interpretation, and it can also refer to a specific method or principle of interpretation. So we have our own Vaishnava-specific hermeneutics. You can check out the class. There's a class that sometimes happens, if you can find it. I was fortunate to take the class when I was in the residential portion of the GBC College, and it was taught by Her Grace Lalita Devi Dasi, and I recommend it. I also have a summary here, if anyone wants to check it out. And it's really helpful and can help you in the way you evaluate and understand Shastra. So some of the things that you want to consider are the time, place, and circumstance in which it was written, for who it was written, what was the education of the writer, what is your education as the reader, how is your sadhana, have you read all of Srila Prabhupada's books, do you know what the mood and the message of the entire work is, do you know what the mood of Srila Prabhupada is? And you also want to consider how has language evolved? What is the understanding of other acharyas and other Vaishnavas? So the first thing we want to remember is that Srila Prabhupada learned a slightly older kind of British English and didn't necessarily know the exact best word for every context, right? And so we must also understand that the editors that were working with Srila Prabhupada were very young and very new to this. And they perhaps weren't yet comfortable challenging Srila Prabhupada when it came to these kinds of word choices. Another thing to consider is that the Oxford Dictionary, which Srila Prabhupada used in his translation work, gives several definitions for rape that we're all familiar with. But there is a very rarely used definition, which says to transport, ravish, or delight, right? So this seems like almost opposite of, not quite, but like almost opposite of our common understanding of the word rape. So like, let's go with the term ravish as it is commonly used in popular culture today. So if you look at that term, it's a little bit more in line with the mood of Srila Prabhupada. So ravish as it's used today in popular culture means like a forceful seduction, but there's consent there, right? So let's also look at the fact that men want to conquer and women want to be conquered. Now, some women may object to me saying this, but let's look at some examples. So you often hear, like at least I've heard, talking with other women, but I've also seen it, in like women's magazines or on TV shows. Women often want men to make the first move, right? They sometimes insist on it, right? Now that's changing a lot now. Things are not quite how they used to be, but that was generally how it was for most of history, right? They wanted the man to make the first move. Another example is, think about when a couple gets into an argument, right? And maybe the girl, she'll storm off, she'll walk away, maybe she'll even break up with him, and then she'll get mad because the man didn't chase after her. He didn't fight for her. Maybe she'll be like, you were supposed to run after me, right? And that's because a woman wants to be wooed. She wants to be won. She wants to be swept off her feet. So let's look at the billion-dollar industry of romance novels, right? Now, romance novels are the highest selling, or the top selling fiction genre, right? These books are primarily written for and bought by women. What do we see on the cover of romance novels? Is anybody? Yeah, Uncle S.
I was given my marriage in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania, and I had to go to the court to get a marriage license.
Yeah.
To marry my wife. And they gave me the license, and then they also gave me a present. It was a bag, and one item in the bag was laundry detergent. But the other was a book, and it was a romance novel. And there was a guy looming over this girl. He was about to get her. And she was like, and then the lady handed me the bag with a wink.
Yeah.
Okay, guy, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
My fiance.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go grocery shopping with my mother, and now I don't really see so many books in grocery stores anymore. But back then, they sold novels, and like in the magazine section, and there would be like whole shelves, like just full of all these different romance novels. But the covers were all the same. The individuals might have been different, but they were all the same, right? It was like a strong, powerful man that had obviously, kind of aggressively pursued the female heroine until she was conquered and gives into his advances. And this is where the picture of the cover is taken, right? She's being held in his embrace, right? And this is literally every single cover, right, of these books. And so we also see this same thing in Hollywood, the same dynamic, right? The male lead aggressively pursues the female lead, and at the end, she succumbs to his advances. And that's such a common trope. They call it, he got the girl, he's getting the girl. Who's going to get the girl, right? This is in almost every single movie I've ever seen in some form or another. I mean, there might be like one or two exceptions, like documentaries or something like that, but in literally every single fictional movie I've seen, this is in there in some form. So why is that? Why is it that we see this so much in our entertainment? Why is it that this is what sells? That's why we see it, is because this is what sells. And this is what people want to see. This is also the fantasy of like the majority of the planet, right? The women wish to be swept off their feet. The men wish to be the sweepers, right? They want to sweep those women off their feet. And so it is in this mood that we should see this controversial statement. Not that that there's a forced act of sexual intercourse without consent. That's not the mood. The mood we're talking about is a mood of seduction, right? But forceful, but with consent. So a woman likes a man who is very expert at seduction, at wooing, at pursuing, at winning her hand. And this is because the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So we can see that Krishna is an expert in all of these things. And this is demonstrated with the story of Rukmini. And in her town, she was hearing the sages and also all the other people. They're talking about Krishna all the time. And she became just so enraptured by this talk, hearing about Krishna. She didn't even meet him, and she fell in love with him, right? Because he had all these great qualities. He was glorious. He had strength and valor, and he was had all these great qualities. And so she decided, I want to marry that guy. I want to marry him. And actually, most of her family, they thought, yeah, that's a good idea. They were for it. But her brother Rukmi, he wanted her to marry his friend Shishupal. And Shishupal, for whatever reason, he just never liked Krishna. He really just did not like him one bit from the time he was born. And Rukmini, she didn't want to marry Shishupal. She didn't want to marry him. She wanted to marry Krishna. And so she became quite desperate. And she was desperate to marry Krishna and desperate to not marry Shishupal. And so she sent a letter through a messenger telling Krishna how much she loved him and requesting him to come and rescue her. And she even suggested a plan. She said that before her wedding, she was going to go worship at this temple. That was a tradition. And that he could come at that moment and come and take her away, rescue her from this unwanted marriage with Shishupal. And so on the day of the ceremony, Krishna came. He arrived at the temple in his chariot, and he valiantly fought off, her kinsmen, and grabbed her and whisked her away, and they were married, right? And they lived quite nicely and happily together. And so in this way, we can see how, Krishna, he overpowered Rukmini, but it was with her consent, right? He overpowered her and took her away in a very valorous display of we'll say like machismo, right? He just kind of took her away. And Rukmini liked this. And so it's also said, I think I mentioned this in a pretty recent class, but it said that women are a multiplier. This is a saying, right? Women are a multiplier. You give a woman a house and she makes it a home. You give her some flour, she makes some bread, right? A man gives her his seed, she makes a child, right? But you give her a hard time, she makes your life a living hell, right? So, so in closing, I'd like to say that, a woman takes pleasure in giving pleasure, whether that's in the household, delicious food for her family, or keeping the home clean and attractively decorated, or by keeping herself attractively decorated, or by being a nurse, or there's so many things that, have, so many professions that have more women in them, and generally those are the professions that are helping people, right? Yeah. Yeah, so she's doing all these things because she wants to give pleasure to her husband, to her family, to her society, to her lover, to her children, whatever it is, right? Because a woman wants to be enjoyed. She wants to facilitate that enjoyment for others. And she wants her partner to enjoy her and what she can do for him. And that man, he wants to pursue, he wants to conquer, he wants to enjoy that enjoyment that she's providing. And this is just the natural order of things. And if we do this, but with Krishna in the center, then we're able to advance in Krishna consciousness nicely. And so I think I'm going to end there. And if there's any comments, questions, realizations, Uncle Esper.
That's working.
Oh, yeah.
A few years ago, the BBT was so concerned about the public ramifications of this purport that it actually it sent out an email, not to everybody, but I got it. And, different people involved with the books over the years, and they said, "What would you suggest as a remedy for this situation? Not just this purport, but especially using this as the most, as you said, egregious example." So I said, yeah, obviously in your context, in terms of hermeneutics, Prabhupada's always talking about protection of women. So
Yeah.
He's saying women life is great in the sense that we understand it now. So I suggest that it is a fact that a woman likes a man who forcibly wins her heart. So the lady, Kashori, was a BBT editor, she said, "That's very nice, but it still doesn't solve our problem if it would change Prabhupada's words."
Right.
So what do? We can't change words, because once you start changing words, where does it end?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's when Vaisheshika Prabhu comes in. This was a multi-email conversation. And he said, we need annotated editions of Prabhupada's books where we don't change his words, but we just explain the usage in terms of what he meant. This archaic usage, this Victorian archaic usage of the word rape. It means this. It means something like what I suggested.
Mm-hmm.
So they liked so the BBT liked that, and there is, as we speak, a panel reviewing all these different problem places and problems. You misunderstand. They haven't gotten to this purport yet, but I think they're still on the Gita. So yeah, we have to understand things in terms of Prabhupada's intention. His intent, his content, they don't necessarily match in terms of what we're hearing. As I was saying to Lalita last night, we were talking about this a couple of nights ago, and she had said, that if someone like Jaya Goswami had been the editor at this time, a couple of years later, when he was sending very pointed questions to Prabhupada, and would say, "Prabhupada, do you know that rape means something today?" And so Prabhupada would have just, of course, he would have said, "Okay, then you change it." Mm-hmm. What do you suggest? What does it actually mean? Mm-hmm. Or what do you intend, Prabhupada? And forcibly went over the heart. Something like that. So, they appear to be great problems, but they're not problems once we approach it in a very, considering all these different factors. People shouldn't, they read something in Prabhupada's books and they just fly off the handle and then leave. No, understand it. What is our qualification? That's part of the hermeneutic.
Yeah.
What's my qualification to understand this? Do I understand what Prabhupada? Yes.
Yeah. Jai. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I mean, this is just devil's advocate. Not that I'm a fan of, but appreciate what you all said, and I've heard this, and it sounded really nice. It sounds nice, except, I mean, I assume this is Prabhupada's words of this, they're not adjusted. So it says in this regard, where a man is always famous for aggression, for such aggression is sometimes considered rape. And then it says, although rape is not legally allowed. So we're now qualifying what he means by rape.
Yeah.
He's qualifying the word rape. You can kind of get an understanding of what he means with the word rape. It does say it's not legally allowed. Now let's try to be as generous as possible with this and go, okay, 1910 in India,
Seduction was
it
illegal.
legally allowed to come on strongly with a lady with consent, with consent, with consent? Was that legally allowed then? And if it was, then I'm sorry, I think we're left with, just taking the words.
Yeah.
Left with, maybe your arguments don't work.
Yeah, no, I considered that as well. And I do know, I don't know specifically in India, but I do know in that time period, seduction, as it were, in many places was illegal. They didn't specifically say that there had to be intercourse present, right? There.
What was it legally allowed?
Huh?
It becomes, was it legally allowed?
Right.
Because that's how the Prabhupada's defined. It's not legally allowed.
Right. And I do know that in some places in the world at that time period, it was illegal. To
approach some lady.
Yeah, it was called you're debauching the ladies. You can't do that, right? I mean, I don't know if you could go to jail. Maybe you get slapped on the. Yeah. So, I mean, I considered that too, and I did think, I mean, that could be an issue. But I do know that in that time period, I don't know specifically though about the time and place where Prabhupada was. So I don't know. That is something to look into for sure.
It would be nice if somehow could fit in with that problem. Because it doesn't.
Yeah.
No offense, but practically speaking, how does this involve itself? And certainly Prabhupada, read the whole Bhagavatam that you said, it's all about protection.
Yeah.
So that fits in, but this one sentence is really
Yeah.
is the one with not legally allowed.
Right.
So, just from a rational point of view,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Uncle S. Prabhu.
Story I tell, that Judananda tells, the Prabhupada told him about how Prabhupada's father squashed the idea of Prabhupada marrying another girl. Because he didn't like her.
Yeah.
So the way Prabhupada's father handled that was he approached the father of the beautiful girl that Prabhupada wanted to marry. And he asked him that simple question: does your daughter dance? Does your daughter, which is the cultural equivalent back then of saying, is your daughter a prostitute?
Right.
Because Because she was a daughter of a high class guy, from a Brahmin family, and they're practicing. And so he was so insulted. He said, "No, she does. She's a. I would never allow that." And he was so insulted that ended. Because in India, when you're married, families married. So,
Yeah.
So that wasn't. That was considered. Because we're dealing with high class people.
Right.
So that wasn't allowed. That kind of a thing was completely. Whereas today in India, it's still an issue.
Mhm.
India is still a place where the women, it's so bad. It's still an issue of women, being so violated and things like that. In 2018, the woman was on the bus.
Yeah.
And she was thrown out of the bus to die.
Yeah. And even on a lower level, I mean, I've watched something a few years ago about, how things are changing in India that, that there are couples that are living in sin, right? They're not married, but they're consensually together, but they cannot find places to rent to them, right? Because socially it is unacceptable. So it's maybe not illegal as it stands now, but that is a consensual relationship, and people will not rent them places to live in because of that, right? So it doesn't have anything to do with the production of children or rape or anything like that. So, yes.
You mentioned a lot of things about movies and magazines and books and so on. But it could be argued that this situation with the man and the woman that likes this and that, but it could be argued that just, as let's say 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and still that momentum continues today. Let's just go back 40 years ago. We have the majority of people in powerful positions being men. And they're calling the shots. They like it this way. So you can say all those movies, all those books, all those magazines and all that, the men are in charge and they like it that way. It's not necessarily what ladies really like. I mean, you could place that argument in what you're sharing. I'm not saying that argument is correct. But
Sure.
It might be though. And I think going back, all the way back to Bhagavatam, studying Bhagavatam would be more, and you did mention the meaning there, but that would be maybe a more pure way of viewing this, is that does that paradigm work within the ancient texts? I'm not sure. I think about that, but that's just a thought, and playing the devil's advocate.
Sure.
I appreciate the class, of course, but really good points. But presenting that as a, possible thing to consider.
Sure. Yeah, I will say though, the popularity of romance novels, I don't see men reading those. It's women that read those, right? Men choose other forms of stimulation when it comes to romance, right?
Maybe you train that way.
Maybe.
You're a male children.
Yeah, perhaps.
And you think that just like what I thought when I was a kid, it's how life is. Not how life is.
Yeah.
It's what I've been trained. And I went forward with it. That's all I did. Like, yeah.
It's true.
I think the Bhagavatam illuminate that recognition.
Yeah.
We see a brunch is definitely there. And a few other personalities. Similar thing perhaps. But anyway, just a thought.
All right. All right. I think we'll end there. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Good night.